Hello!
Hey.
We don't have a host this week. Stuck with me. I'm going to pretend to host for the next 59 minutes. I'm sure I'll do a average job. Let's go through some announcements quickly. So this is a bit of a different live stream. So this isn't a regular Q&A. We have a leadership live stream on Thursday, I believe. But we're effectively going to talk about TOB release. We're going to talk about TOB hard mode and basically everything that's happened from there. We've got a bunch of hot fixes and changes. We've got two very prevalent PVMers on the stream. We've got a cold one and Aatykon to very you would like to push the limits of our game, and that's really been prevalent with the latest release. We can't seem to release anything anymore that takes longer than an hour to complete, apparently. So we want to talk about that and talk about where the game's at and things like that. But yeah, so there's a couple of announcements before I know we actually do the announcements afterwards. I'm not even following the script correctly. I've already messed up. It's been 3 minutes. So yeah, Aatykon and the cold one, how are you both doing?
I'm going first. I'm doing great. It's British summertime and it's full, really. I've had 3 barbecues this week. I've got my vaccine booked, and I have a red scythe, so it's a pretty good week for me.
Fantastic. How about you, a cold one?
Things have been nice. I've been on vacation for the past week. I'm still down in Florida for the next week or so before I fly back. I've got to visit my family. I've met my newborn niece who's 2 months old, and her name's Serafina. And yeah, it's been a very nice time the past week.
I apologize for releasing all this content when you're like mid-vacation, like completely on me.
Yeah, so now I know I can just blame you 100% for all of this. It's all on you. You decide everything.
No worries at all. How are you, Elena?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I've been deep in design work recently. And in my spare time, I've only been doing hard mode TOB, really. So that's my life. How are you, Mother King?
I'm doing pretty good as well. I've been going through a lot of feedback, Twitter, Discord, Reddit, and playing a lot of hard mode as well. Like 15 KC or something like that now, I think. Not seen any kits, very unlucky. See how it is. But yeah, we've got one person with a scythe, I guess. Your team's got quite a few things, Elena, this weekend, right?
Yeah, my team has. I think they've got about 4 holy kits now. None of them with me. Well, I've seen them get it, but I'm never lucky.
Never lucky, especially with mutagens as well. Fantastic. So we got a couple of announcements, the regular things to go through. So exclamation mark downtime. We're taking the game offline at 8 o'clock on Wednesday, BST, June the 9th, to conduct essential upgrades and maintenance. So apologies, but you're going to have to spend around 6 hours twiddling your thumbs, planning your grinds out, doing a bunch of theory crafting as opposed to actually playing the game. During this time, you'll be unable to play old school RuneScape or RuneScape. As well, you won't be able to access any of the websites, the forums, high scores, things like that. We're doing like a lot of work behind the scenes just to refurbish things somewhat. So sorry about that. Exclamation mark TOB. So last week's update, we released TOB hard mode as well as a regular story mode and a quest. So since the release, we've made a lot of hot fixes and things like that to either make sure people are interacting with mechanics in intended ways, either buffing damage or reducing damage here and there. We've got some more changes on the way as well. We plan to make a bunch more changes on Wednesday to both story mode and hard mode, just to kind of iron out the kinks. And we've also got a lot of feedback to make on the quest as well. So we've heard a lot of feedback where it doesn't really feel like a quest, right? Especially because like maybe it's auto-completing and there's not maybe a lot of dialogue or revelations that you people are generally, like all the players generally expect to receive the quest. We've heard that completely. We plan to completely rework the quest. In terms of when that comes out, is up for debate, but we want to get it out pretty soon. We don't really want people to be hanging around with this mini quest as you guys have been putting it for too long. So we want to rework the quest. So you'll be able to replay this when it actually gets reworked. So you won't be missing any content by doing it early now and then having to not be able to do it later. So everyone will be able to experience this quest. I've talked to Ed about it already. He's got some really interesting ideas. And I think everyone knows that Ed quests are always fantastic. So I'm really excited about it. He's giving me some sneak peeks about the lore and the revelations that he's going to put in there. So I hope you're excited too. We do acknowledge that it wasn't really up to scratch on release. So fantastic. Analysis. So yeah, today we've got two proficient PVMers on the stream, and we're going to talk about TOB hard mode. We're going to have a clip of a Cold One's first run through Theatre of Blood. We're going to like talk about it, speculate it, talk about maybe what was going through a Cold One's mind at the time, as well as Aatykon's perspective when his first runs were happening, and generally just talk about TOB and how it's been going. So yeah, I guess we could go straight into the clips. Or clip.
Let's do it.
So this is my perspective here, I guess.
All right, let's go.
Alright,
Yeah,
so
I
what
think
is
the server's just restarted.
normal, I guess, is we just started up. I have a very minimalist inventory, just a mage switch so I can line freezes at Maiden, one-way range switch because you only need it for one room, really just being Nilo room, and I have a ZGSMA inventory, which we saved that for Verzik Phase 3.
Was there anything in particular that maybe you were anticipating at all? Like maybe you're like, oh, maybe this is going to happen. You were very confident that we had made a certain change that may or may not have happened.
Yeah, one thing I was guessing would happen with Maiden was there would be a different set of Nilos. So instead of 70, 50, 30, they'd spawn at 80, 60, 40, and 20. And maybe there was something put in place where you wouldn't be able to skip Maiden, whereas you wouldn't be killable if there were any red Nilos left. But I wasn't too sure on that, so we just like kind of played it vanilla and just cleared the room out the normal way. Here I remember everything was just kind of the same. It's like, oh, everyone's just taking damage, it seems fine. But Kriskies ends up taking a bit more damage there than usual, because we didn't know about the ramp-up mechanic that existed for Maiden, if you're just tanking for too long consecutively.
Yeah, and that ties into the stat reduction as well, right? So Maiden has an effect where she actually reduces your highest attack bonus by a portion of the damage dealt. And because the damage was like getting higher and higher so much faster, I think that was something I heard one of the players mention, how like I just got drained a lot of stats. So that was like the first indicator of that mechanic, I think.
I think it's just when they noticed.
Not many players really noticed that on day one for sure. It took us 2 days, I think, in some groups to realize there was even any damage ramp up. There's a couple of things like that throughout the entire raid that sort of exist that we didn't realize as well.
I remember Titas sent me a picture, I think on day 2, of like in-game chat of saying you take increased damage as you take consecutive hits from Maiden or something. I'm like, well, now that happened. I see one of our teammates kiss the floor over in the back, and this is when we noticed Maiden's attacking faster. Like, wait a minute, this is an actual change. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, so
it was around this point that we realized.
Sorry, go on, Atty.
It was around this point we realized the Bloods were not killable as well, I reckon. We'd just kind of frozen them or left them alone, and we were like, hey, the blood trails are kind of stacking up over here. So I think most players caught on that pretty quickly, though.
Yeah, we caught on the blood ones weren't killable.
You had a bunch of predictions as well, didn't you, ahead of time?
I made a huge list, and I got a fair few right for the first like 3 rooms, but none of my predictions for Verzik were correct. But still fun to try and have a think about them at least. Some of them were kind of nice to know ahead of time, or at least have an idea of though.
Yeah, so I think a lot of
the
changes
first room with only 1 death.
It's pretty clean, yeah. I think generally people didn't struggle too much, especially because you're bringing in a lot of supplies. As long as you were comfortable to use them, people were generally encouraged to use them because everyone wanted to get the first completion, right? So people weren't too worried about using supplies. People were always going to clear that room first time. But I think one of the issues with hard mode Maiden is like if you're already really good at that room and you don't really make any mistakes at all, the room is relatively similar. It's only that when you start making mistakes in that room, it really, really spirals out of control. Attacking faster, increased ramp damage, increased damage just from the crabs getting in, blood spawns getting out of control, right? You run out of room to stand. But for our very, very elite players that don't really seem to make any mistakes these days, the changes weren't as prevalent.
Maiden's my new favorite room actually. It's kind of like the truest. It's kind of like the truest change, sort of to keep to the base mechanics and enhance them. But it feels like you're more rewarded for playing cleaner, which is a really good thing.
Exactly, yeah. There's no RNG in there anymore, really. Just like Bloodspawn RNG has plagued people for 2 years.
Please don't remind me. Alright, here was one change for Bloat that we kind of all predicted, how hands would just be falling the whole entire time. And this still trips me up to this day. Like, the few hard modes that I've done outside of day of release and the solos I attempted, I actually died on my first solo Bloat because I forgot the hands were falling and I set myself a path into Bloat and got whacked and killed. It's like, oh yeah, it does that.
I've noticed that quite a lot where people just kind of fall into old habits where they just turn their brain off and like all of a sudden getting comboed.
Yeah, but this room is like pretty vanilla. Other than that, it was so cool. Just like having to always look on the floor, like while you're supposed to be relaxing in the traditional like Theater of Blood run. So we'll do things where we just like step off and observe and like auto path back in if the tile's safe and everything.
I think a subtle
still get
change,
hit
like
anyway.
Bloat being able to turn twice as well in like the same wave, like generally fairly consistently as well. That's actually such a subtle change, but it just means you can't relax. Like all the changes in this room is about just making it so you can't relax. Because generally it was a fairly chilled room for the majority of the time. As soon as you see him
It's
turn,
changes
you
things for
just
speed as well.
throw yourself at him.
It's super
Just
scary. If Bloat's
demands
down, he can turn immediately as soon as he wakes up, like on tick. So that's very,
Yeah, you
very
can't
It's like
scary.
that in the
run
normal
through
mode as
Shally
well.
anymore. What a lot of people do is run through in Shally, like Crystal Halley spec. You can't really do that anymore because he might just turn on you immediately.
Right, this is one of the rooms that has like the nicer changes. I guess Nylocas, if you want to skip ahead about like I don't know 30 seconds a minute, because we're all like playing pick up our supplies, and I'm having an internal battle with the door.
This is the,
Yeah, 30
is the
seconds,
point
40 seconds.
where-
I don't know exactly how far into it. Yeah,
that was
right
the
around
point
here.
where whoever died at Maiden realizes they had like 3 points at the chest. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
There's also another subtle
supplies.
change just to make supplies actually matter, because that's quite a common thing in regular TOB, where you can bring like one brew in and maybe purchase like 2 at the second chest, and you're generally fine. Can't really get away with that anymore.
And here we notice like the waves order is exactly the same. Like most of us in this raid know the exact order of the Nylos. We have it like down to a science, so we notice all the waves like, wait, they're exactly the same. So we didn't notice any changes yet.
The first thing our team did
Until
when we
like at
went in
some
was
point I tried like ragging one to see if there was recoil, and then
yeah.
I forgot about it and tried barraging something. I'm like, why did I just take like 60 damage from something?
Yep. First thing we did when we went in was hit the wrong crab on purpose. See what happened. Like,
Let's
oh
see
yeah,
how you
okay,
react
okay.
now.
And then this happened.
Yep,
This
and then
was
that
kind of-
happened. Like, wait a minute.
This was kind of expected, but still a little bit scary. We weren't sure how much it would hit, really. I mean,
Well, we expected
it's,
the
you know-
like the full boss to like come down early.
Yeah, it's been noted that
But
the
now we get
stats
3
of these things
princes.
are a bit too low. So there's 3 demi bosses that will spawn throughout the waves, but generally they're roughly about the same as like a big Nylo, when they should be considerably more powerful in reality. So there's going to be a couple of changes to those stats going forward.
And I think our next raid after this, we came up with the idea of just like being ready for like whatever waves they spawn. I think Alex wrote down when they did, so we could just be ready with a scythe and a claw spec, and it just wipes that out if all 5 people do it, guaranteed.
Yeah, I really like that extra level of coordination that players have really like tried to incorporate into the waves now. Because generally you can kind of just do your own thing in here. And it's never really been much of an issue. Well, the extra level of coordination is always appreciated. A lot of the TOB changes, which try and force that, right? Because we don't really have much of that in old school, where you actually need to coordinate with players actively, consistently. Generally, you can just do your own thing, not really react to what your other teammates are doing.
I mean, Great Olm kind of has that with like the teleport mechanic. That's a thing.
Yeah.
That's only once every like 30 seconds in an Olm fight. You don't skip it.
Yeah, and then as soon as you actually do skip it, then you never see the mechanic ever again.
Yep. I think that bugged wave is coming up fairly soon on the south side.
The triple big melee one's bugged as well. There's another big one underneath it, and it's like I did a solo one, just the normal mode, like last night, and I noticed it was like that as well. Even in the normal one, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't right.
Yeah, a couple of small
Like
issues.
that's not supposed to be here.
I think they have a bunch of like different coordinates where it's like what their area they're supposed to spawn from is which, as well as which pillar they're supposed to attack, and there was just a bit of mix up there. So they'll be getting fixed this week as well.
Alright, I think I start taking damage around here because I start barraging everything. Like, okay, pillars are starting to go down, we have to protect them. So I see a bunch of damage stack on me, I'm like, what is going on? So I start like blood barraging stuff, trying to heal. Alright, let me try blood barraging here. Why am I taking so much damage? What's going on? Like, it was early for me. It's like 7 in the morning. I'd not finished my first coffee. The gears were still like turning a bit. I'm like, what is going on? Am I tripping right now or something?
Oh, and you lost a pillar.
How did you lose a pillar in 5?
Average. We let us HP hit 0.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so all of us are just focusing on making sure that all 5 of us are alive for the boss, because we don't know what the changes to that are.
This final prince that comes down is a real problem one in the early raids. Because it comes along with like 4 or 5 aggros as well. And then people either focus the boss or leave the aggros, and then huge amounts of damage.
Quickly gets out of control.
See, I did not use the Phoenix Nexus that Chris Keys was so kind enough to give me. I didn't even think about that for our first one. I think if one of us goes and picks them up, because we're poor. I don't remember, though.
I love the slow realization that these attacks are actually doing something different. I wish it was more impactful on release. It quickly got hotfixed for the range attack to actually deal more damage, since people were just ignoring it, but the bounce damage is relevant from the mage attack.
Yeah, we noticed the splash there, so we're not like death dotted or anything. We didn't like think of any of that until like the next raid when people started telling us like, hey, this works like this. And then this attack I think was bugged.
Well. With the range attack or the mage attack?
Yeah, the range attack I think was bugged on release, right? Where it didn't spread correctly. And then I think our next raid, all of a sudden, we're just death dotted, and then we just take like 40 damage. Like, wait, what just happened?
So on release, it basically just did a regular range attack to anyone who was in the radius. So it splashed correctly, but because it's still rolling accuracy and it didn't have any minimum damage, generally you just tanked it, and the damage just was negligible. So it quickly got updated, so it skips accuracy rolls completely if you're in the splash radius, and then the minimum damage is like 15 or something. So that actually makes it a relevant mechanic that people actually need to do something about, because you can't just tank back-to-back 15s constantly.
Yeah, we've begun to learn that the mage damage from that boss is super scary.
Yeah, the mage damage from the Nylocas boss is crazy. I think I've seen clips where people are getting hit like 120s and stuff.
Yeah,
I saw pictures of that and I was mortified. And now I wonder why Exact is doing this on his hardcore. I'm genuinely curious.
Right. We found out during a hardcore run, so it was a little bit like, yeah, time to eat up a little.
Doing new content on hardcore on release. Questionable.
Wouldn't recommend it.
So what was your first reaction to the Sotetseg maze?
I was kind of bugged out when I saw, like, wait, why is my maze only 4 tiles? I think it's Bodhi that actually just starts running it down. Yeah.
So I can see my red tiles and just immediately just runs to it.
I was super
then we had a
confused.
little talk and figured out that it gets split between all of us, like we all get a portion to show.
I had the very end of the maze when I got mine, so I just looked there and saw nothing. I was like, huh? And then I saw everyone run out from underneath me, and I was like, this makes more sense now. But
this is probably one
he really just legs it.
Was that Bodhi?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, yes.
And the anchor is out.
Poor guy. More things.
And that was a problem because he had a portion of the maze, so we don't know his part.
You need the general direction.
I mean, yeah, he was getting closer to the portal, wasn't he? Just, the way there was a bit messed up.
This is a really cool idea from Jagex Husky to actually split this maze up, and he coded this part as well. And he said it was a real pain, but I think it was worth the pain. I think it was really cool, quite creative.
It worked out.
Yeah, this is a really, really cool addition. Alright, so I think here we kind of like solve it, like, okay, everyone has a portion of the maze, so when we get to the end of one, whoever's next in line has to show like where it actually goes from there. And then it kind of just clicked, like, okay, this is how it works.
And
then we got here and realized, like, oh wait, Bodhi's dead. That was his
Bodhi's
part,
dead.
so we have no idea where to go.
Good improvisation, though. Not too many deaths.
Mm-hmm.
And then this,
And
yeah.
this part psyched us out. We just cheesed it.
Just ticky, when in doubt.
I feel like most
Now, whose
teams
idea
kind
was
of
it for
end
double
up
ball?
resorting to that.
What was your first thought when you saw the double ball? Like, what went through your head in terms of, okay, how do we deal with it?
For our team, it was just like, let's DD, which of course turned out to be the worst possible thing you can do. In hindsight, probably should have realized something was up there. But at least as a gut reaction, that was just kind of what we went for.
This is always like a really weird thing when it comes to RuneScape. Like, there's some things that are really hard to convey, and it kind of just has to be like brute force, right? People figuring out correct patterns and things like that. Because they're generally just hidden mechanics. So you only really learn from failing a couple of times. But I was really surprised by how fast people actually figured out the correct spread pattern.
There's a really nice flow of information between Twitch streams as well. So we'd have chats from 3 different people, and people jump in between them, kind of relaying what's going on.
Yeah, it definitely helps a lot. Brute forcing with other people's experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel more confident about the base this time?
The anchor is gone, so less maze to worry about.
Bodhi's not here.
Do you have any specific predictions for this rune ahead of time?
I was really wondering what they could do to change this. I was thinking the ball would lock the player in place, so teams would have to run to them as a sort of way to force teams to group up there instead of a preset position. But I had no clue about the maze. That was a nice one.
Arcane, are you taking notes for harder mode?
Harder mode
TLB. Oh my god. There has been a lot of good community suggestions in terms of like, this would have been really cool to do. One that I really liked was the Nylocas waves. Like, not necessarily just changing the waves or making them completely random, but you could have had like preset waves, maybe every 5, 8, 10 waves or whatever. They just had one aggro maybe that was random, right? So it actually spawned as range or mage or melee. And everyone would get used to like, oh, this wave we need to all look out for, and you'd react to it on the fly. I think that would have been a nice little addition for the players that have really memorized those waves to a T. But no, there's no harder mode TLB in development.
Why not?
Well, with all these hotfixes going on Wednesday, it debatably maybe is harder. And now with Demi Boss getting buffed, I think will actually make those waves quite a bit more difficult, especially because there's like a big delay when they spawn right now. And that's getting reduced significantly, so the waves they'll flow a bit faster. So the Nile room difficulty is going to be going up. Xarpus is a really weird one, because it's such a simple room, right? You literally just stand on these things on the floor for a bit, and then you'll just attack it, dodging some acid in a really rhythmic fashion. Mixing this thing up in an intuitive way was quite a challenge. In general, the idea was just to make it so people generally wanted to melee run or basically use their space efficiently, because as it is right now, the arena is so big, there's a lot of room for error. So making the entire arena smaller like this just makes it a bit more time critical. For most players, they're they're spec'd down efficiently and actually got decent gear and weapons and don't mess around too much. It's fine. But for those that maybe have worse gear, or maybe they're not really used to melee running and things like that, maybe they're going to have a much harder time in this room now. Need to actually think about where they're using and where they're moving and use space efficiently, which I think was an okay change. Obviously, P3 is a bit of a different story. I've heard a lot of mixed opinions on it. I think I'm really happy with how P3 goes. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts as well on Xarpus P3.
Super reclined. I don't know, I'm a big fan of reclined gaming. I don't 5-tick or anything at Xarpus. I just click back every 4 ticks and enjoy. So I think it's a welcome break. There's a lot of sort of you need to stay mentally sharp throughout the waves, especially things like Bloat and Nilo now. So it's a welcome break. And it's got a it's a little bit more technically difficult to set up. So I think it's good.
It's just rewarding once you get it right. Once you set it up correctly.
And I've done a lot of times.
Opportunity to PK your team too.
Yeah, and people just PK each other constantly, or they'll just kill themselves by accident. Like, on my armband, I use a Blade of Saldor, and all my friends have sights, so then I'm like 5-ticking my Blade of Saldor so I don't like accidentally kill people or myself. So there's a lot of small things like that, and I imagine if with a bunch of teams, like you got someone with a T-bow, or he's using a blowpipe or a whip, like loads of different attack speeds, it ends up just getting even more complicated, right? But for full scythe teams, it's a lot easier.
It's interesting that if you were in a less experienced group, this would be a lot harder now. You have less room, and then, of course, they have different attack speeds. But if you do happen to have a group of 5 scythes all synced up, it's really, really easy, if anything. But it kind of goes to show. It kind of goes to show that like the level of players now is also really, really up there compared to back on TB release. So it is that the content's harder, but people are already there in terms of ability.
That's the thing. People have mastered this content in the past 2 years, right? So unless we've made a lot of unintuitive mechanics or like one-shot mechanics and things like that people had to learn over time, and maybe it's kind of hard for them to figure out and practice like the muscle memory and things like that. It would have been really hard to actually make this, so it took people days, hours to complete, right? People are just so good right now. It needs to really be like another Inferno-esque level challenge where it takes a lot of time to get to certain points. And the cold one's the first death. Nice.
Bodhi's fault, that man killed me. That's when I realized this room has PK opportunity, and I love it.
Or dude.
I think best clip goes to Lake, Puggin, and X-Bay on their first run. The double PK, all on one side. Perfectly timed.
That's the thing, and there's not really much room to react, right? You can't really react to someone running in and just clicking your boss immediately. You're dead.
I can't remember if it was you, Arcane, or Husky, who... I think it was you, actually. When you were trying to make the room smaller, you initially wanted to make the scenery smaller instead of putting acid there. But normally, we just put down like one tile as one piece of wall or a piece of fence or something. But upon further inspection, you found that the scenery is actually 8x8 tiles that are just hard built like that.
It was really awkward because it would have been really good to just like remove like one tile in the middle of the room, say, and then you like just move everything in by a tile, just to like shrink the room. And generally we can do that with most content. Even like this room itself, right? You'd think you could just remove one tile from the edges of the middle or something, make the carpet thinner or something like that. But like in this example, the carpet could have just been all one massive, really long piece of scenery, and then it's like, okay, I can't do anything with this because I'm not an artist. So yeah, the acid I think was a really good compromise or interesting way of shrinking the room down in the thematic way. I tried a lot of different things like falling rocks and stuff like that, but the acid just felt clean. Actually made it a bit more dangerous.
I also like how it happens upon entering, so it's not obvious before you actually go in.
Yeah, it's a cool little thematic thing, right? Visually impressive.
So you were all kind of safing up here behind the pillar before starting.
Everyone was super cautious for this, expecting like Verzik attack to auto-kill you, and then expecting crabs to come on the pillars and things like that. So I think it was fair to be a little bit cautious. And then this happens.
And then this happens. Like, wait a minute, hang on, that's new.
The panic starts to set in, especially if you get hit on the way back or forth.
Yeah.
So the idea of this was just to try and disrupt what people currently do, right? Because right now it becomes very like brain dead when you're doing this room over and over and over again. You can just turn it off, get into the rhythm, and just go. So just trying to disrupt that in some way. So you can't just camp the same pillar anymore. And if you are going to try and camp it, it's going to be pretty awkward. So generally, I think people have cottoned on to the fact that you could just run between multiple pillars, right? And you equally damage them.
Yeah. We managed to get quite lucky on this and figured it out on the first run, or at least Jesse did. Shout out, Jesse. There was this big oh moment from everyone, sort of like looking at the other pillars. There's no rocks over there. Just go there.
That's kind of what we had internally as well. I remember when Husky tweeted about P1 being the brick wall. That was like the raid before we had that aha moment of like, oh, of course.
Yeah. We were a little bit confused about that tweet for a while. Just like, are you sure? Because you can just go back and forth.
Exactly. I think I scared a lot of players in the community. Like,
You scared me with that one. So here I am thinking, oh, there's going to be one pillar, or the pillars are going to get one shot or something. I didn't know there'd be rocks falling from the ceiling.
I'm not sure if that would have been possible. You only get 6 attempts to kill the boss.
Mm-hmm.
Face tanker, it's fine. Bring a dense bulwark, that would have blocked it, right? Huge demand. Supply's not looking too good, but I guess he's dropped quite a few of them.
Yeah, we all dropped like half our stuff. Just very customary thing we have to do. So we have no idea what to expect from any of this.
Yeah, it's safe. The downside of playing an Iron Man on release.
I mean, you chose to limit yourself. And I'm
chose to
fused.
get hit by that pillar.
I was just testing if it still worked, right?
Yeah.
Just had to see for science.
Yeah.
This acid is the most annoying mechanic that you guys have added by far. For the last 3 days.
I actually really like it.
For the last 3 days, as P2 starts, the entire team says acid in synchronization, just to remind everybody. And we still step in it.
Every time. Just trying to make
just like that.
Xarp more useful. No.
It is that muscle memory just overriding you sometimes. Like, you think you can
That's
relax,
kind
you
of
go
the
to
point.
autopilot, and you step back onto the tile that now has poison.
The entire point of this is just to disrupt the rhythm that people have built up over the past 2 years and try and mix it up a bit, make sure you can use space effectively. Like in a 5-man, it can get a bit chaotic, especially when you've got like crabs everywhere as well. Like it's all just to add to the chaos and make sure you use room effectively. So crabs have had quite a few changes. Have you managed to find all of them so far?
So the main one is that they changed colors, which I don't think they did before. And the next one is that they have an increased pop radius by 1, I think. And then lastly, you can deal your max damage with anything that you hit them with, except T-bow, I think, for some reason.
I
Might be
imagine
one
it
or
does
two more
work with
things,
T-bow, but T-bow's max hit is probably just really low on them, right?
Yeah, it's like a 12 and they have 13 HP or something. But you can one-shot them with blowpipe or sang staff, so it's a very welcome change.
Yeah, so the idea is to basically just make it so perfect popping is still the best thing to do, right? But imperfect popping, even if you just miss it by a tile, is going to give you like 18 damage or something like that. So you either perfect pop every time, which is kind of awkward right now since they're slightly bugged. But otherwise, you want to actually kill them. They always rotate in a predictable cycle. So I think it's always like a mage, melee range mage. So you know exactly when they're going to turn into, say, mage, and then you can equip your trident and give them a good old boot. And then you'll always kill them. Which I think people have started to figure out now. And it's actually like a fairly nice strategy for big groups where there's a lot of crabs. You don't know if they're on you. You're trying to sort out a bunch of other stuff at the same time.
Arcane likes to snipe them across half of the map, pretty much.
Yeah, they call me the British sniper, you know. They don't. I won't say it again.
That's what you said last time.
My god. A cold one tanking Premier League?
I did warn them at first because I didn't know if she'd follow the same rhythm as normal, but she was exactly the same. trying to remember exactly like what we planned. I think we set it where, like before Green Bomb comes out, we wait for Nados just to see what happens, and I freeze her. But I don't exactly remember too well.
Yeah, I saw that strategy in a couple of streams where people are bringing like a ZGS or trying to catch a freeze with like full ancestrals and stuff like that, just to give you like more breathing room. I thought that was pretty smart.
Oh, so now you popped it early, so you have to deal with yellows during tornadoes.
The plan
Yeah,
was
I
to
remember
try
this
and
happening.
skip it.
When there was a melee tank and we thought that healed her for 1,000, like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. And then this happens.
Just take one each, yeah.
And then one disappeared. I'm like, wait a minute, what? And I think that's Bodhi dead in the corner.
I think this is why we opted for 3-mans. We were expecting a couple of things that would cause a bit of chaos in 5s. But yellows is one of my favorite changes as well. Requires a bit of timing and pathing. A bit of coordination.
Yeah, they're set up right now so you can always make it. So you mean you can make one of them, you can make all of them. And hopefully they're given enough leeway with tornadoes as well, since it can be quite awkward to run away and not heal with tornado while setting that all up. But it definitely kills a lot of people. Cold one just running around.
Looks like I
guess.
used before too. I mean, look, I was out of potions. It happens. Sometimes you run out of lemonade.
I see someone in webs.
That's when you get grapes.
Yeah, but right when Green Ball came out there, we went to our strategy we worked on the day prior, where we all meet up in the southeast and just walk it down. Because we didn't know if it would like one-shot you, or if you didn't bounce it, you'd stay alive, but it one-shots the rest of your team. So we just had something planned like that, and it ended up actually working for us.
I love how much chaos the heal actually brought, though. Because like the entire point was to like make sure people have to interact with a lot of these mechanics while tornadoes are up, because it just makes it all so much harder, right? But then if you could just burst the boss down and last 20% every single time, it didn't really work. And just arbitrarily increasing the health of the boss as well didn't really work. Or maybe you could increase like the percentage that it triggered out, but then it didn't really have that like climatic feeling where it was kind of like, oh, we're almost to the end of it or anything like that. So this like almost like phase 3.5 that you could call it, where it just gives you that extra push that you got to get through. Hopefully hit the spot there. I know some people find it frustrating because you feel cheated out of a kill, but it's all just perspective at the end of the day, right? There you go. You actually get the KC clean. Mm-hmm. 0 deaths.
100% clean. Yep.
Clean, unlucky, no purple.
I'm very happy about that. So, looking at the raid now, so it's been out for around half a week now. I assume we've done quite a few KC, both of you. What would you say is like your favorite rune now? Like, I know, Aatykon, you mentioned the Maiden.
Yeah, definitely Maiden for me. I like the I like the changes in most places. I'm a bit annoyed about Sotetseg balls and green ball a little. So I like Verzik, but minus green ball. But Maiden is still the most true rune to like an upgrade to the rune that stays true to the mechanics. So I'm still going to say Maiden.
Nice. What about you, Colin?
Honestly, I have to put it on Sotetseg, just because the two changes completely changes the dynamic in there. The mace being split between everybody, the fact that you have two balls that you have to set up perfectly so you don't have to go tick eating if you don't want to do that. So I think I have to give it to Sotetseg for this one.
There's been quite a few other small changes with Sotetseg as well. I don't think people have actually figured out yet. They're only minor, but they do actually change it up significantly in terms of where you should prioritize. So I think there's actually quite a few things in the raid that people haven't figured out yet. Obviously not going to talk about them until they become meta and people have established it and things like that. But yeah, there's still quite a bit to uncover. I mean, I'm really excited to like see where the metas really go on this, because I think that's something that ToB itself, that's where the lasting content really came from. Like TOB got completed like day one, right? And it was pretty hard and people were struggling, but then eventually, like the metas that we have today are so different to how people completed it on release. I want to see how far it can go. I don't expect it to be as different, right? TOB released versus TOB now in terms of the metas, but I'm really excited to what people discover in terms of like the small little meta efficiencies here and there, to actually master this content, especially after the crabs get fixed. That mechanic is actually reliable.
Yeah, every day there's a little bit more synergy within our teams and a little bit more sort of emphasis on doing one more thing, like, you know, popping crabs with Sang at Verzik, which people never do before. So I don't know, it's definitely having some changes over time.
Yeah, I think the Nilo boss is one I was really impressed with people at. I know people are calling out for like, oh, the range attack needs an extra tick before it comes out, right? And because it feels like you don't have enough time to run away, but then that was because everyone was DDing on the same spot. Because that meant you actually needed 2 ticks to get out far enough away from each other to actually avoid that spread attack. But people have actually figured out you don't actually need to DD. You want to be close to each other. You don't actually need to DD. And people have actually figured that out. I've seen some cool diagrams online and stuff. And people are actually just surrounding each other as like a cross or something. And then you spread out from there. So you can actually do it. So it's not like every mechanic needs a change. Sometimes you just need to change your strategy and figure out different things to actually get around some of the more punishing mechanics. And hopefully we keep seeing more of those.
It's a little bit like a Sepulchre release. People complained for 3 days, and then everyone loved it on the 4th day because they kind of warmed up to it and adapted.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing with Sepulchre in general, right? Even though Sepulchre's solved now, like people, like when they try and learn that content, like people don't like failing generally. It's frustrating. Like it feels bullshit. Like you get hit by a fire that they think they don't, because like RuneScape's a bit all over the place as well, right? In terms of where your character's positioned and where it actually gets hit. That takes getting used to. But as soon as you get used to it, as soon as it clicks, I said a bad word. I'm sorry. I'm British. Anyway, but as soon as Sepulchre clicks, like it's so satisfying. And that's like PVM and RuneScape in general, I think. As soon as everything clicks and you start to understand ticks and it all just works and makes sense. And it's like you just need to trust your clicks. You generally always go off outside of server lag or whatever. Now the chat is just gasps, including the producer.
What have you done?
It's doomed.
Alright, someone else bring up a topic. I've ruined everything.
What do you think about, because I know on release, some people said, oh, that's the sound.
That would be my niece.
Hello, niece. Some people said that Top was too easy on release. What do you guys think about that? Is it too hard? Is it too easy? Is it perfect?
I think it kind of goes back to the idea of players have had 2 years.
Oh no, it's frozen at the worst time.
Oh no.
Unlucky. I kind of know the point he was going to make, though. How players have had like nothing new to sink their teeth into for the past 2 years, so we've just spent all this time perfecting the content that's already out right now. I'm sure you remember the space race between Exact and Rendy for the level 3 Fire Cape, and recently the space race between Aatykon and Neen for the fastest Inferno time. And just everything. We've just been perfecting every piece of content that already exists at this point, so it's kind of hard to gauge if something's too hard or too easy. If you just look at like a very small pool of players like us, I guess.
Yeah, like I think within my little group of friends, like I think it is quite hard. Like there's a lot of wipes, there's a lot of like really scuffed completions and stuff like that, and that's exactly where I kind of wanted it to be at, right? I don't want people to have 100% completion rate already. Obviously, some teams have, and they're the god gamers that have been pushing the limits of RuneScape for years now. In terms of how future content's going to push this, it's just going to have to be like the extra evolution of stuff. Like you've never done anything like this before, but like TOB hard mode, there isn't anything in there that's particularly like revolutionary, right? So a lot of the intricate mechanics and like small things that add up. Damage actually matters in a lot of scenarios now. A lot of small things, but in terms of what the players are actually doing, it's generally the same stuff, just in different combinations, different orders, etc. Making sure what they're doing is actually more punishing as well if they fail to do it correctly. And that's what's really going to have to be to like actually push the players further. Right? It's going to have to be like revolutionary stuff where people have never done anything like this before. It's unfamiliar territory, whether it's like fundamental changes to how the game actually works or mechanics or anything. That's really going to be what it has to be to actually give people that long-lasting challenge. But there's also just the challenge of perfecting things and metas and things like that I think top hard mode's still going to have at that time, which I'm pretty happy with.
Yeah, I wouldn't call this by any stretch too easy. It just looks that way if you look at, like, let's say Wook's stream or Krisky's stream, who just got the first hard mode solo, I think, yesterday. But if you look at just the generalized player base who has done a fair bit of top, I'd say this is still pretty challenging, honestly.
What do you think, Elena? You've been running that all weekend as well.
I think we established earlier that I have the most KC within the team right now. I like it personally, and I think it is at a good middle ground between hard and not too hard, because we want this to be completable by everyone. And I think the people who said it wasn't hard enough, like straight off the bat, were maybe people seeing these really talented gamers complete it, first try, which is fine because they're that talented, but not everyone's at that level. And I think we, should make it good for those people too. And obviously, there's
the fact that it's like...
Yeah, sorry, go on.
So.
Exactly.
I was gonna say, like, it's also the fact that it's grindable content, right? Like, you wouldn't want to release, like, something, say, as difficult as Inferno was on release, that you're supposed to go in over and over and over and over again and complete for, like, 200, 300 hours to get all the rewards, right? That wouldn't be something that people generally want. Really good Twitch stream and everything, right? Like, really difficult challenges, individual completions are amazing Twitch content. But if you actually want people to spend, like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours in there, you don't want it to be, like, really long and frustrating. So I think I'm pretty happy with the middle ground. I think everyone I've talked to that has done, like, a decent amount of content is pretty happy with where the difficulties are. And some of the tweaks in this week's update, the Wednesday. There's no real update this week, but we're just going to hotfix a bunch of things on the Wednesday. There's like a pseudo update. I think that'll make it a lot more enjoyable as well. At least I'm hoping so. What would you say is the most challenging part of hard mode top then, a cold one? Like maybe individual mechanic, or maybe individual room, something you personally struggled with, or maybe your team did?
I think it might be the same answer for a lot of people. It would be phase 3 Verzik if you've got her in enraged phase with tornadoes out, the yellow panels and green ball juggling, unless you've got the kind of plan that Addy and his team have, where they all do something called the Pog Tank, and just run around Verzik in sequence all on the same tile so that it passes the green ball. It's a work of art if you've ever seen it before. But other than that, those two mechanics just stand alone by themselves, I think are quite difficult to manage in hard mode.
Yeah, it really is like pure chaos, right? Like people trying to like dodge crabs and deal with all the crabs and swap prayers whilst keeping DPS up, while keeping away from your tornado, and then yellows spawn, and the crabs could still be alive at this point because crabs actually last quite a long time now if you don't deal with them. Like it really just ramps up. So if you're uncoordinated with your team, Verzik phase 3 is definitely a mess. It can get out control real fast. Especially as well that I actually realized there's a bug right now that's been live for 2 years where she actually heals 3 times what the hit spot says. So it'll say like it heals it Verzik for 50. Like say it'll do 50 damage to you. It'll say that it heals Verzik for 50. It's actually healing Verzik for 150. It heals for 3 times as much as it says. Some people might have noticed that because it never really correlated, but just from a glance, it's quite a big change. So that's something that'll be fixed. Where the hit spot's correct. I'm not nerfing the heal, but the hit spot will actually be updated to be accurate. That was an interesting one I didn't realize was there. I'm not even sure if other people have realized that for the past couple of years.
I never knew that one.
Like, we knew the heal amount was different. We just thought it was just supposed to read that way. We knew it was 3x, whatever you healed her for.
Yeah.
I just looked at it and was like, okay, whatever. It just displays that for some reason.
That's just like an old school mentality, right? Where it's just kind of like, yeah, it doesn't look right. It's probably right though. It's probably correct. It's probably fine. Bugs are our features.
It's a very humble view, though, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
you're basically assuming that you're wrong instead of the game is wrong, which I think is really humble.
It's funny. a lot of things like that in OSRS, I think. No harm done though. Would there be any individual mechanics you would like you really don't like then? Anything in particular that's like frustrating, or you're just like, I would much rather this just doesn't exist? Or maybe it's just like an inner gripe where you're just kind of like, yeah, it probably should be in, but I don't like it.
I'm probably going to hate myself for saying this if you end up changing it, which I hope you don't. But the green bowl, I'm sure you've seen a few times, can be cheese with a locator organ redemption if you're on low HP. But I just don't like how that works in a team setting for challenge mode top, is because it's supposed to emphasize team mechanics. And if everyone knows how to do it, it's like, oh, the team mechanic is just know how to do it.
It's one of those weird things where it's like, it's okay generally when it's like an individual player doing it, but when it's like, say it became a meta, right? And like everyone started doing it and it was like super easy to do, and like generally anyone who was doing top is doing it. At that point, it starts to feel like, okay, people aren't interacting with this mechanic as intended, it should probably be changed. But like right now, it's just not many people want to do it, not many people want to bring the locator orb in, not many people could do it consistently, especially because there's a lot of other things going off as well, right? So I don't think it'll ever get to that point. I think the change that we did kind of on a similar era was making the yellows not be able to be ticket on release, because they're perfectly spaced out, where like if you ticket one, then you can just spam your sweets or your brews or whatever, and you would ticket the second and the third really easily. And that wasn't really that hard in reality. And I could foresee that becoming a meta if it wasn't changed, because it would have just been easier to do that than actually have to sync it up and line it up and stand on the pools correctly. So that was quickly changed. And then that was where most of the early hotfixes were at, where it's like, okay, the meta's quickly going to become something that's just not really doing the mechanic at all ever. But when it's just like an option, it feels okay. It's just when it becomes a meta, it's something different. Yeah, I don't think that people are going to adopt that as a meta, I don't think. Just maybe some groups of players that are really good at it or something, I don't know. We'll see.
If it does, please don't change it, I beg.
Because it ruins all your solos.
A little bit, yeah.
Do you think it'd actually be possible to do solos with that mechanic not in place? Or be too much
You can already do it.
It just makes it a lot more tight on supplies.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows, maybe that's a good change. Maybe you'll be watching the stream back and regretting it.
Yeah, because solos need to be harder. That's right.
Yeah, they should be harder, especially in hard mode. That's fantastic. Good in this list. There's a question here, prescribed question. Who do you think was the MVP of your group for your first KC?
Yeah, I don't think we saw that, actually.
Rooks? What did he do that carried your team? Why was he the MVP?
He didn't die. All four of us died at some point or another.
Immortal Rooks. That's a pretty good reason. I guess he was literally the MVP if you go by the board system. Maybe you would have had a different perspective. He was the MVP for just existing.
That was back when you could eat the yellows. That was hotfixed the same day, I believe.
Yeah, quite quickly. Like, okay, that's not right. No, fantastic. Unless anyone has anything else, any other questions for a cold one, or maybe topics to discuss, we can wrap up.
Yeah, I'm sure chat has a few questions. We have 5 minutes left. If you want a mini Q&A.
Mini Q&A? Is there some chat questions somewhere? I can't see any.
So long as they're not mean questions, I guess.
Chat right now.
There's a bunch asking how my cat is. My roommate's been looking after him while I've been away, so he's doing well.
Nerf whoops? No. Sorry.
Hello.
Okay, we can only answer meme questions for the next 5 minutes. Hey,
Welcome
Aatykon came back just in time.
Missed you.
Yeah, I have returned. PC did a bit of a boost.
We're answering some meme questions in chat.
Mm-hmm.
There's too many serious questions. It needs to be more memey.
No, I'm not making a hardcore to solo hard mode. No thanks. I'll pass.
How many marshmallows can you fit in your mouth, Cold One?
Jumbo sized or regular sized? Because the answer changes.
Regular sized. Regular, yeah.
16, I think.
That's quite impressive, to be honest.
That's all.
Crazy. I think we need an in-game competition.
In game.
Yeah, get some marshmallows and then maybe your character's mouth has... I don't know, just stop me from talking.
Usually I like these kind of like live design sessions when someone like has a wild idea and we just go with it. This is not one of those things.
Yeah, I don't think I'm fit for this.
See if I can like
Fantastic.
spot me else.
I think I'll just go through the announcements real quick then and we can wrap up. So there's like two announcements. So the game will be taken offline at 8 o'clock BST on Wednesday, June the 9th. We're going to be conducting some essential upgrades and maintenance. During this time, you'll be unable to play old school RuneScape or access any of the websites, such as the high schools, your account, forums, etc. So I'm sorry for that. You're just going to have to go on Reddit and Twitter and whatever people do when they don't play RuneScape. I'm not really sure, because I usually just work. !TOB. So last week's update saw the new Theatre of Blood content. Since release, we made a number of fixes, and we plan to make more. So even though there's no update this week, we're going to be hotfixing a batch of changes for story mode and hard mode. The blog that was posted last week and under !TOB will be updated with all the further changes. We're also going to be reworking the quest. We heard your feedback loud and clear. It doesn't feel like a quest, so we're going to make it into one. I've talked to Mod Ed. He's got some really cool ideas and some revelations that he'll be putting into the quest in terms of actually making it feel like you learned something from it, which will be really exciting. We all know that Ed quests are amazing quests. But cool. Unless anyone else has anything to say, see you bye.
I just wanted to say thank you to Aatykon and Nicole Bloon as well for coming on and sharing your insights.
Much appreciated.
And really
It was
cool.
fun.
Thanks for the invite. It's great.
Thank you for inviting
Very
us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys.
Bye!